Hey all, welcome to 2025 and our sixth season of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It's been such a journey so far of learning, and I'm really looking forward to today's episode because it's with a pretty good bloke. He's okay. It's actually myself. I'm doing the first episode introducing my learnings over 5, 6 years of this podcast, and also through all the work I've done with global experts and with companies myself to truly help them create a better future. It's a simple episode, but it does go into a bit of detail and gets under the hood. The big thing I'd recommend is to go to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website and download the blogs and tools that are there for the strategy and behaviour deployment, which we're going to talk about, but also adaptive leaders who serve from the Leading Excellence book. The other aspect I'd say is really, if you're interested in this topic and you truly want to make your company better or your organisation better, and move forward to truly make things better for generations to come, consider some of the one-day workshops we've got coming up. And just reach out, but we've got them on all these topics and more. The reason we're doing one day is because most people can break away from the whirlwind of the day-to-day for one day. It's also very low cost and just learn together. Like, we've had some great events already on different topics, going to great company sites, like we've got Fairer upcoming on total productive maintenance. We've got Rudd coming up on the Leading Excellence group. So it's just an all-round win. We get to network together, learn from the company site we're at, who's on a journey, but also just lean into one day of thinking about best practice and how do we create a better future for our organisation, the people in it, and the generations to come. So everyone, I won't hold up anymore. Let's get into the episode. And to note, you can get this recording on YouTube also if you want to watch my scrollings on the flip chart, but the episode on the podcast will be perfectly fine because I do verbally detail everything. Let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we share knowledge from global experts in how to create high-performance, agile cultures of continuous improvement and innovation. Cultures where employees wake up smiling and excited to go to work and make a difference. Cultures where leaders feel they have the time to proactively serve the growth of themselves and others.
I'm your host, Jeavons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. By improving our organisations, we create a better future for generations to come. An economy where our children and grandchildren can experience the joy of owning their first home. An environment where they can enjoy holidays on clean beaches and marvel at the beauty of nature. A future where they feel safe, respected, and empowered to make a difference at work, bringing that energy home to their families and communities. This show is proudly brought to you by the Enterprise Excellence Community and Group, which is focused on helping organisations create this better future through this podcast, our community, where you can engage with global experts, tour best practice sites, and also our workshops focused on the most important topics to truly help your organisation improve into the future for those it serves. Visit enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to learn more. Hey all, welcome to episode 187 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, and welcome to 2025. This is our sixth season, and it's been such a great opportunity to be able to share all these great guest knowledge over all these past 4 or 5 years. It's been amazing. This year, we're really looking to focus in on some elements to help organisations truly move forward, and we're going to talk a bit about this today. I'm going to be actually covering the first episode and just providing some insights from what I've learned from all our guests over the years, and also my own journey. To achieve enterprise excellence or operational excellence or whatever you want to call it, it's quite simple, but as we all know, it's not easy. And so we're going to unpack a little bit today on, well, what does it entail? I think the reason for this focus is that I believe there's no bigger thing we can do in life than set things up for the next generation. You know, we have our life and we have a great time living it, but we also need to think about that next generation coming of people and everything that goes on this earth. And for me, that's about creating an economy for our next generation that is at least as good as ours, if not better, that they can have the wealth and prosperity and be able to live a good life, own the things they need to own, go on holidays, do what we've got to do in our generation. I think that's only a fitting piece to do. The other aspect for me is, as many of you know, leave the environment in at least as good a position where they can enjoy the outdoors and the quality of the environment, clean beaches, great temperatures and everything that goes with it that we have enjoyed ourselves. And so for me, this is the main driver of everything, really. How do we help through organisations? Because we are the creators of prosperity and wealth, but also we are the creators of impact on the environment. And that's where I'm like, wow, we've got such a great opportunity to do the right things, because there is a win-win between both. Not always, but a lot of the time, there's a complete win-win between getting greater economic outcomes for future generations and also the environment and the community impact that goes with that. Now, if you look at it in the world, it's really exciting times. We've got all this new technology. We've got artificial intelligence coming in. We've got advances in Internet of Things and devices, and just such a great opportunity to lean into that. We've also got full employment virtually, where there's jobs out there, but there is this talk of cost of living crisis, and this is all over the world. But to me, there's a bigger problem that no one's talking about at the moment, and that is our productivity position. If you look at it, in Australia anyway, our operational manufacturing and supply chain productivity is actually going backwards, negative 1.5% year on year at the moment. Now, that's not going to end well. Productivity equals prosperity. If we become more productive and slicker and faster and better at what we do things, we make more wealth for future generations. If we don't, the economic outcomes for future generations goes backward. And I think we see that slightly starting to happen at the moment, because this productivity crisis is not new. Yves Modiox, who's been on the podcast back around the early hundreds episodes, he is a legend in this space and has been studying it for a long time. The negative trajectory has been going on since virtually the late 80s, but it's getting worse and worse. Now, if you look at it, to turn this around is not hard. Our best organisations in the world, their productivity is going through the roof. 4 times, 10 times the rate of their nearest competitor. So they're outstripping the market. The trick for us is more broadly throughout organisations, become effective at growing productivity, our ability to do things more efficiently and effectively, not by burning people out the right way, but also reduce our impact on the planet at the same time, provide that environmental outcome. So this is what I want to talk a bit about today is, right, well, how do we do that? Are you in an organisation where your productivity is going up, or you're in an organisation where it's going down? Do you even know where you sit? So let's unpack 2 things that can help an organisation shift into that echelon where your productivity is outstripping your competition by 4 to 5 times, and you're also reducing your environmental impact at the same time. So the 2 elements that we need to focus on is simply, number 1 is strategy and behaviour deployment. That's number 1. And number 2 is basically leadership. So let's unpack these. For those listening on the podcast, you can actually watch a YouTube video on this. I am doing a bit of a flip chart at the same time, but I'll make sure I describe it in such a way that you can follow on. So if you look at it, let's lean into the first aspect to actually help an organisation really lift its game and improve productivity. Now, before I do this, I just want to let you all know my background is one of being very passionate about lean and other process improvement tools, and also agile and all these techniques. Now, the problem with those techniques is if an organisation is rolling out training to people on how to improve and improvement techniques without having a way to engage them strategically, but also connect them to purpose and help them also lead into culture themselves, create that autonomy, but also accountability, you're not going to get the results, and it's not going to sustain. Also, in an organisation, if your leadership journey is not a real focal point and you're not really focused on growing and developing leaders and bolting your whole culture and systems approach into that, you're also going to really not get the results. The basis of creating a continuous improvement culture, I like to describe it as having small business units throughout the whole organization. You know, small business units of 5 to maybe 10 people at most who are aligned to purpose and culture and really motivated to chase some aspirational goals. Like, that's a simple formula. If you don't have that in play, just deploying training to people won't get dramatic results across the board. The odd high performer will grab it and run with it, but the rest will often end up being annoyed because they're thinking, man, you're training me on all this stuff, but really I've got this other problem over here that I don't need these tools. And so that's why strategy and behavior deployment is so important, because it helps you connect people throughout the organization to purpose and aspirational goals, but it also allows you to create that autonomy where they're lined up and they can now operate in a small business unit style structure, but it also allows you to create an accountability rhythm, sort of a shorter time box type execution cadence that motivates people to improve, and then they'll actually choose the right tools and techniques to help them achieve it. The other aspect with that, of course, is why leadership's so important, is that without the right leadership behavior that we explain in Leading Excellence around leaders, adaptive leaders who serve, you're not going to have the culture where people want to improve and chase aspirational goals. That's why these two are so critical. So let's get into strategy and behavior deployment. So if you look at it, any organization around the world that is really pumping and achieving rapid growth and improvement in productivity, quality, customer engagement, all those metrics that we need to achieve to get results, they have some form of frontline small business unit type of structures where you got teams at the front line who are able to execute work in an aligned way and actually drive and aspire to aspirational goals that they've got. Now, to do that, organizations often have multiple layers of authority or leadership. And there's been a lot written recently about the frozen middle. You know, there's middle management, which is frozen. I think that's a bit disrespectful because it's frozen for a reason. It's frozen because an organization is not effective at strategy and behavior deployment and then executing off the back of that. It's often a system in the organization that's causing that frozen middle, not that middle management's just going, right, I don't want to do anything and I'm going to be upset and grumpy and just be this muddy type, stuck in the mud type of people. So to do strategy and behavior deployment, the first thing you need to do as an organization is to understand the organization's purpose. Who and what do you serve? And what do they value? And why do we want to strive towards that? And that creates some pretty cool purpose statements. And there's many you can find out there throughout industry and books and case studies, and we all know the good ones. Once you have that aspirational purpose, the next thing is to align to that a vision for the future. Now that vision can be at whatever horizon you're looking at, but really it should be quite vivid. It should be descriptive. In 5 years, in 10 years, or even longer, you're creating that statement or that drawing or something that people can see. It brings that clarity and alignment for where we're going. That should connect up to your purpose. The next bit is to really look at your objectives now. So some people will call them objectives, some people will call them strategies, depending on the models that you're using. Now, to get your objectives and strategies now, there's a lot of great strategy work you can do. Of course, it's got to be focused on competitive advantage. Of course, you've got to look at external forces, internal forces. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but you got to get down to this clarity of what are the critical 2-3 things that we need to focus on improving and working towards now as an organization, or innovating towards to be different. The next part is that you set some aspirational goals. Now, once you've got your aspirational goals as an organization, you're starting to create a formula that you can then connect the whole organization to. Aspirational goals are really meaningful goals that should line up to your purpose and vision of where you're going. So for example, you could have a company where you're like, we just want to chase sales growth, okay? Now sales growth often, depending on your culture, is not aspirational, but you may be able to swing that to a different aspirational goals, which is like the number of customers that come back in 2 years to buy again. And you would predict that by gaining more customers and doing great customer service, you would get more customers coming back in 2 years to buy from you again, if that is a relative buying cycle. What I'm saying is that really your goals, if you can, look to connect them to your purpose. There's an alignment. They're like meaningful goals. And there's techniques you can use for that we're not going to go into in this session. After aspirational goals, there may be some leading measures. Now these are measures that we can control ourselves that you can actually determine would actually drive towards our aspirational goals and our objectives forward. So leading measures are activities are like measures where you're like, right, well, it's critical for our customer that they have amazing supply chain experience, rapid delivery and on-time performance. A leading measure to an objective, like an objective might be that we're looking to actually improve customer experience through delivery, best in market, to truly delight them. A leading measure for that might be like looking at your delivery on full on time out of your factory, and then you can go even deeper from there. So for example, objective might be that amazing delivery experience for a customer. A goal may be the delivery time to the customer. A leading measure might be around the key impact or the key constraint that's stopping you getting there right now. It might be factory capacity. It could be that we got to just really work on optimizing our capacity through the factory to then get the results through from there. So they're leading measures to drive your aspirational goals, to lead you towards your objectives and vision and purpose. It all correlates together. Now here's the next part of strategy and behaviour deployment. This piece here we've spoken about so far really gives you your strategy and that alignment to strategy. But the next part, a lot of great companies really work on, and particularly in countries like Australia, where culture is so important, we believe this is even more critical, where you take your values or your principles as a company and you define with these some ideal behaviours. Now, often organisations will focus on ideal leadership behaviours at that top level, because at the top level where we're forming strategy, you actually are talking about leadership behaviours. Now again, these ideal leadership behaviours become a guiding light for the rest of the organisation as they start to set their behaviours. And I want to talk about how you do that. So if you look at it, to start with, you've got strategic direction through your purpose, vision, objectives or strategies, whatever you call them, aspirational goals and leading measures. And then you've also got another element, which is you've got your culture through your values or principles, and then you've got some ideal leadership behaviours that you're looking to guide that. Once you've got these components in place, hopefully at the most senior level of the organisation, but I'd like to say it doesn't have to be. It could be you want to create a beachhead or a part of your organisation where you're very good at this and the executive mightn't even be on the journey just now. I'm not saying it has to be the executive. It could be just a leader of a state or a region who's going to put this in place, even if the executive don't have it in place. So it could be the whole company. It could be just a region. It could be just a department is going to do this. So I just want to pose that, because sometimes if senior leadership aren't on an excellence journey, the rest of the organisation can just give up. I can't do anything. I don't think that's the case. If you're a middle manager, you can actually move down this path and get this going and then create amazing performance and culture that then senior leadership and the board really wake up to and go, wow, how'd they achieve that? So I'd put that challenge out there to anyone. Don't feel like the executive and the board have to be leading this out. You could do it within your own area, prove great outcomes, and then inspire the rest of the organisation. So let's get back to it. You then got the top level strategic element of purpose, vision, objectives or strategies, aspirational goals and leading measures. And then you've got the cultural element where you've got values and ideal behaviours, typically ideal leadership behaviours if you're starting up higher in the organisation, but it could just be ideal behaviours if you're starting this at your team level. The next bit then is deployment. How do you deploy this through the organisation so that you can align everyone, create autonomy, but also then an accountability element? Now, there is about a 4 degrees separation between this process becoming micromanagement and it being truly a process that creates alignment, autonomy, and motivation and accountability, right? It's a very slim deviation here. I want you to consider a model that Chris Butterworth, who was a co-author of Leading Excellence with Dargs and I, wrote about in there, where he said any system or process that you're looking at in an organisation, you should start with the purpose of it. So if you look at the purpose of strategy and behaviour deployment, the purpose is to align and engage, create autonomy and motivation in every team throughout the organisation, and also that level of accountability and drive. And then the next thing you do once you know the purpose of a system like strategy and behaviour deployment is to look at ideal behaviours that you would have if you were very good at this system. So if you look at the ideal behaviours you want at the front line, because this is where you see it, is you want the front line to know exactly their connection to purpose for their team and how their aspirational goals line up to the current objectives and vision of the organisation, and that they've got the autonomy to be able to think every day or every week how they're going to move forward on small improvements or projects they're executing to get results for who and what they serve. And the next thing Chris talks about is then, well, you can actually measure that. So Chris is an expert on what's called key behavioural indicators, or KBIs. Once you get to a behaviour and you're clear on that behaviour, it's actually measurable. You can track, is it happening or not? Even if it's just as simply as red, green, amber. Is it amazing? Is it okay, amber? Is it, we're not very good at that yet, red? So once you know the purpose of the system, the ideal behaviours, and maybe you can measure those ideal behaviours through a KBI, then you can go, right, look at how you deploy the system and put it in place. So when we talk back to strategy and behaviour deployment, a lot of the determinant of how well you actually create that outcome where you've got aligned, empowered, motivated, accountable employees all the way down to the front line that are executing small improvements and projects to truly get results and drive forward, a lot of it comes back to leadership behaviour, how we deploy it. So let me give you a few behaviours that can help you get great results here. The first is, before you lock away the top level strategy, the purpose, vision, objectives and aspirational goals, and also the values and ideal leadership behaviours, take them out to the organisation and get feedback and let people give you information and feedback and consider it and make some adaptations and changes based on feedback. But be clear to let everyone know you won't necessarily be able to make adaptations with every bit of feedback, but you want that contribution. And when you make changes, let the organisation know again what changes you did make and thank them for the help in achieving that. So that's one technique that can really help you get those results. There's an approach called big room planning, where you actually have teams of the organisation in the planning process. That's another great technique. So once you've then got it in place, the piece that's really going to help you deploy it well is being an adaptive leader who serves. An adaptive leader who serves is about really focusing on the growth of others. And when you're doing that, you won't shove objectives and metrics down people's throats and say, you must do this. You're going to be more curious, humble. You're going to take that plan and go to teams below you and go, okay, so this is what we've come to. What's this look like for you? How do you connect to the purpose of your team connect to the purpose of the company? And you might back and forward a bit. And then you go, okay, well, what's your objectives or strategies right now? And how do you connect into what we're focused on? And what are your aspirational goals as a team, the few? And what leading measures could you focus on? It's that really open coaching type questions and having no preconceptions to it. I'm not saying you can't debate back and challenge and get them to think differently, but your language as a leader in this process will either make it micromanagement, that you're forcing them to do something, or it'll be very collaborative. The next thing is with the cultural alignment or behaviour. You can go, okay, so these are the behaviours we're focused on now as leaders, our leadership team. What's that look like? Like, what would be your few ideal behaviours in your team to truly help you lead forward and achieve these goals towards our strategic direction? And so it's a very humble, curious type leadership behaviour. And the reason for the word adaptive is that every team and group of people is different. So you need to adapt your style to suit. You will truly be a leader who serves, really have it that they own their plan and what they're chasing, and they will be accountable to it then too. I don't believe accountability can come if you don't empower or create ownership, first of all. Ownership then allows you to create accountability, particularly in the West, in Australia and other countries like us. So once you've then got these pieces in place, you're really thinking about your leadership behaviour as you're going to deploy this, it's then about helping each team define their connection to purpose, how they connect to the purpose and their aspirational goals and their leading measures and also ideal behaviours. And then they'll start to also form up some projects of focus, like what projects should we focus on to actually drive towards our goals, aspirational goals we're chasing, and also some small actions or small continuous improvement events. Now the trick is, if you're a hierarchical type of organisation, as you do this, it's important that you facilitate events like big room planning for those that want to research further, where particularly cross-functional teams that are dependent on each other, that rely on each other to win, get to debate and challenge each other's connection to purpose, goals, measures, projects, and small CI initiatives that we're focused on. Because otherwise, if these cross-functional teams that are critical to each other don't work together, and they end up with competing goals and competing projects, maybe projects that we don't have the capacity to deliver, or they could all require the IT department, where the IT department only has minimal time and we don't have a way to outsource. Like, it's very critical that a really strong conversation goes on here. Now, often the way that organisations do it, and I've seen it work effectively, is that they set up to start with a quarterly cadence where we're looking to set our targets, particularly with goals and lead measures for the quarter, and then define for the quarter projects and some CI activities we're going to prioritise to execute forward. And each quarter we get this event where we're doing that planning for the next quarter, and we get to debate and challenge, particularly cross-functionally. But when I say cross-functionally, what's most important here is where teams are dependent on each other. They require each other to win, or they could impact each other depending on what they focus on, and also impact on capacity of other teams. Now, once you get the middle management, it's about getting down to the front line too every quarter, where they start to line up their goals, their connection to purpose, aspirational goals, and leading measures, and also their ideal behaviours of focus connected to the culture. And this again can be done in a quarterly cadence. You'll often find that your objectives won't alter so rapidly. They may alter every quarter, but they'll typically be longer term. But it's the goals, aspirational goals we set, and the lead measures and the projects that will typically alter every quarter. And what you end up with is like a quarterly cadence where every quarter we're doing another rapid planning event, and we're doing that at all levels of the company to get everyone lined up. And then we're executing in our daily or weekly huddles. That's another topic, but how do you run really effective performance meetings to truly drive culture and performance forward? So this is where many of our guests have spoken about huddles or scrums, or these techniques of rapid stand-up performance meetings focused on a visual management board that really is connected to strategy and culture and allows them to execute the change they're looking to do. So you do your quarterly planning, you're doing your daily or at least weekly execution of projects, but typically there'll be also a monthly check-in where every month in between the quarter, we're getting together, checking our progress and any challenges, but also it's another chance to realign. Things may have changed in the market, things may have changed internally. We might have to adapt within the quarter. So this is showing a quarterly cadence of execution. There is techniques that you can use to run the quarterly review and planning event, the monthly check-in and adaptation, but also your daily huddle or performance meeting to execute forward. How you run these meetings will again determine whether it's micromanagement and your culture could go backwards, or whether it truly is empowering, creating autonomy, ownership, accountability, and energy to move forward. It all comes down to leadership behaviour in those events, but also the behaviour of informal leaders. But again, to me, that comes back to leadership behaviour. If you've got a team member whose behaviour is really negative or causing massive impacts in any of these meeting events, it's up to the leader to deal with that. Recognise great behaviour, but also deal with poor behaviour. So I'm not going to go into these meetings in depth. We'll do that in other episodes coming up. But if an organisation can get very clear on where it's going and also its culture, it can then help every team in middle management and then down to front line connect to that through strategy and behaviour deployment approaches. And they get a quarterly cadence of setting, reviewing objectives and setting aspirational goals and lead measures, and then doing a monthly check-in. You create empowerment, you create autonomy, you create motivation through the connection to purpose and people feeling like they can really make a difference, but you also create a cadence of accountability and celebration to truly drive forward. That's one other aspect I should add to this, that companies are doing really good in this space. They start to hang a recognition system to this that has real weight behind it, because you can connect it to how a team's going and improving its ideal behaviours to culture, but also how teams are going executing strategically, or individuals, if you want to have individual recognition and also team-based recognition. And often organisations will actually really coach teams to set stretch aspirational targets where they're really pumping for a stretch, and if they hit that, there's a certain recognition that goes on, but they're still recognise and celebrate if they come in a few percentages or a fair bit down below to sort of an okay level. So there's some really neat things you can tweak here to truly drive culture and performance. So that is strategy and behaviour deployment at a high level. I'd really recommend the Leading Excellence book to read more on this, but also books like Measure What Matters by John Doerr on the OKR system. There's also tools like OGSM you can read up on. There's videos online on that. There's also work on Hoshin Kanri, which is more from a lean background, automotive type technique. Again, just be wary. A lot of these things talk about tools and techniques to use. The critical thing is to understand the purpose, ideal behaviours you're chasing through this system, and really think about what leadership behaviour and what cadence of meetings and approaches we need to take to truly get that outcome of truly creating ownership, autonomy, motivation, and accountability through this. Once you've got this system going in a company, you can then pivot really fast, because you've got a system where literally every month you can adapt and move. You've also got a system that truly motivates people. Like in the West, we know that the second most motivational factor for people is, do I have an aspirational goal and can I make a difference towards it? So this is going to really drive culture, and it will make the majority of people want to move forward and actually adapt and be agile and make a difference. But also the ones that won't, they may get off the bus because this is not right for me. I just want to do my thing. Maybe they'll go find another company to work for or a different role to do. So critical system. With it, once you start doing lean training then or other training on tools and techniques, people will use it. But often I'd pose to you that depending on the organisation, there's only certain tools and techniques out of Lean or other systems like that you need to truly help people get the results they're chasing. Okay, let's go into this second aspect of truly helping our country move forward and become more productive and reduce environmental impact and make things better for future generations, which is leadership behaviour. I've mentioned leadership behaviour a lot through the strategy and behaviour deployment approach, and I've mentioned to you how it actually determines success or failure, because the number one motivational factor for employees at work, whether it's positive or negative, is actually leadership behaviour. Now that can be your direct leader, but it can also be informal leaders, these powerful people within teams that can highly influence the culture. We talk about this topic a lot in the book Leading Excellence by myself, Chris Butterworth and Stephen Dargan. And in a nutshell, we say that the ultimate thing to achieve excellence here is to be an adaptive leader who serves the growth of others. The reason for the leader who serves the growth of others is that if we as leaders focus on growing our team and people around us, our peers and even our leaders, well, we're going to be helping people get better and better. And by doing that, we're going to get a learning organisation and we're going to get greater outcome. Now, if we've got a strategy and behaviour deployment system, that's going to be done in a focused way, which will get faster results. The other aspect of the adaptive leader is that every person is different. And the context surrounding them day to day, what's impacting them outside of work and at work, is different. So in the book Leading Excellence, we talk a lot about leaders, the adaptive leader who serves capability to pause before they react and actually consider the person or the environment, the team they're about to engage. Consider the context surrounding them. What do you know is happening outside of work, at work, and where they're at right now? And then how do I choose the ideal behaviour to truly help them grow? Now we talk about 5 hats or 5 different behaviours, ideal behaviours that leaders can lean into to truly help achieve that. So if I go under leadership, it's about adaptive leaders who serve I've explained what that is. It's about basically leaders being able to pause before they react, consider the person or team, the people, and the context, and then choose the ideal behaviours to truly help them grow. Now, if you've deployed culture and every team has like a team charter where they have their ideal behaviours and their values lined up, that can help inform a leader how he or she should show up and give them a reference point to refer the team back to, which sustains autonomy but also accountability to the team. Because if they came up with it and they've got their fingerprints over it, when a leader refers to it, well, he or she's actually being a really strong leader who serves. Under leadership, the 5 hats that we defined really help leaders think about, well, what are ideal behaviours that I can really focus on improving or leaning into to truly help my team and culture of the organisation. So the first one we talk about is the Inspire hat. So the Inspire hat is our ability to connect each individual and team to the organisation's purpose. To do that, we've got to understand their personal purpose and goals, and also their work purpose and goals. And there's techniques we talk about in Leading Excellence to enable people to do that, and then help them connect to it, but ultimately lead it constantly. Jim Collins, author of Good to Great, talks about constancy of purpose. Really what he's talking about is that we're leaning into it all the time, both by communicating the organisation's purpose, but also talking to individuals about what we understand their purpose and goals are in life and at work, and staying on top of that and helping them connect it into the organisation's purpose and goals to move forward. There's some great examples of this that we write about in Leading Excellence. The other thing about inspiration is that we know that our behaviours as leaders will either positively or negatively impact people. Well, a great technique we can lean into is actually asking people how we're going. What behaviours am I doing that's really lighting your fire? And are there any behaviours that I'm doing that is draining your energy and culturally impacting you? That's another great part of inspiration. And the other part we talk about in the book is around recognition. How do we as leaders recognise great work? And the more that we can connect it to strategy or culture or behaviours, and recognise an individual moving towards their purpose and goals. It could be at home that, they had a goal of buying a home to support their family, and recognise them and celebrate it when they do achieve that. Major aspect of inspiration. The second hat I'll talk about is the teach hat. We've found, and I've found through all the journeys I work on with organisations, that leaders as trainers is critical. Because if a leader is involved in the training or directly does the training, he or she learns mastery. They become highly skilled at it, which then makes them more likely to wear the next critical hats of the support and coach hat that I'll talk about in a moment. Now, there is also on the teach hat that we talk about in leading excellence, it's important to note that adults learn differently to kids, but unfortunately we learn how to teach by looking at teachers at primary school, high school and university. Teaching as an adult is different, and we unpack that in leading excellence. How do you actually really teach for adult learning and create that good outcome? With the teach hat, a lot of the time now I'm working with organisations to help them develop their own leadership programs and using the leading excellence content, help them develop their own project management training, help them develop their own lean training on the lean tools and techniques they actually need, rather than being an external provider coming in. It's just me living what we believe in, that leaders, if they own it and they teach it, they will support it and coach it. So let's move on to the next hat, which is the support hat. So the support hat is, first of all, how do we support someone going through the learning journey? Because teaching's only the first piece. Many of you might have heard of the old 10, 20, 70 model, where 10% of learning happens in the classroom, 20% through application, which requires a lot of support, and then 70% ongoing in the workplace. Now, the challenge is if a leader's not ready to support someone who's just learnt something new, it's potentially highly likely that they will just stop doing it, because that time from learning to actually putting it into practice is a really quite stressful time, particularly when they're learning something that they've never learnt before. And this is where the support hat comes in, where a leader really needs to mentor and help that person bridge the knowing doing gap. Of course, there's the other aspect of support, which could come into play around learning a difficult new skill, but it could also come around an employee experiencing some difficult aspects at work or outside of work, which is empathy and active listening. So we talk about that a lot in the book, Leading Excellence. How do you go about these techniques? The next hat is written about a lot out there in the market because it is very important, but it is the coach hat. Coaching is about shifting our language to a humble, curious language, open questions. When you've got a person who's quite knowledgeable, the context surrounding them is they're in a quite stable place, and they've understand the process and they've been trained and they're skilled, we can really go into this curious coaching approach, where we could simply ask, well, how would you do it? What's your thoughts? What approach would you take? Or using coaching models that most of them talk to, well, what's your goals with this process? Or what's your goals going forward over the next month? And where are you at now? And what challenges are you facing? And what's the root cause of it? And what options have you got to go forward? And what else and what else and what else? And of those, what option do you want to take? And when are you going to do it by? Let's set a smart goal for that. And do you want to check back in? When do we check back in? So that all the coaching models out there are very similar to that pattern. But the coaching hat is extremely important. But if someone hasn't got any knowledge at all about a process or a skill, we might need to lean into the teach hat first, then the support hat, and then get to the coach hat. Sometimes if we see the coach hat as the one hat that serves all, you can end up with very confused people and awkward conversations. So the coach hat is extremely important because it gets people to think, it gets people to own it, that gets people to be accountable to it, but there's the right time to use it. The final hat, which actually, funny enough, in some cases is not used at all nowadays, when probably in the past it was seen that was used a lot. I'm not saying that's in every company, but it's the direct hat. It's where we directly tell someone something or, call poor behaviour directly. So the direct hat is where you see a safety situation playing out and you just directly get the person or the machine or the thing out of harm's way, and then you might go into other hats. It's where you see behaviour that's going directly against a team's charter or those ideal behaviours that teams defined against their values, and you call it out and you stop it straight away. There's some great techniques you can use here of language that really works, like the situation behaviour impact, or we write about a technique called coach in the book, which is more of a direct language approach that still creates a level of respect and autonomy. And it is needed. A lot of safety situations in particular are happening out there in Australia at the moment because leaders aren't defining ideal behaviours with their teams and creating like a team charter, but they're also not calling people on behaviour, particularly around following process. Like if you're in a high risk environment and you don't have a process and you're not supervising and leading and helping people stay on that process, still supporting them and recognizing them for really doing great process and for improving process, but also calling it when they aren't following that process or that one best way. And then that can lead to bad outcomes. Often when I look at companies when they do root cause around safety, they'll get to this position of process not followed or person not trained. But if you go one why deeper, where you go, well, why weren't they trained? Why did they not follow process? You'll often get down to a formal or informal leader's behaviour that has influenced that culture that then leads to that bad outcome. So the direct hat is still needed, but again, you don't want it to be overused, but it's got to be used in the right way and in the right context, considering the person and context. So everyone, these are the two key aspects that will help organisations move forward, become more productive, deliver greater outcomes for customers, for their people, create cultures that are engaged, motivated, focused, and moving forward. Please note that it is a small margin of error between these two approaches, becoming micromanagement versus actually getting the ideal behaviours that I'm talking about. So that's why I'd really recommend get support if you are just starting down these journeys, and get support ongoing from an expert, because that small bit of help can really help you navigate forward and truly get better and better in this space. The final thing I just want to note is, once you're clear on your strategy and behaviour deployment approach, and you're also clear on your leadership, you can then create a leadership development program in-house or in partnership with people like myself, Chris and Dargs, and many other providers, and then create a system where you train senior leaders first of all, and then you train middle leaders, but the senior leaders are involved in the training, if not delivering it, and then they become mentors and coaches of the people who report to them, or cross-functional team members. And then you come down to the frontline leadership and they get trained, and then they get coached by the managers above and get a mentoring and supporting and coaching routine, which really helps them bridge that knowing doing gap. But the real power that Dargs actually writes about in Leading Excellence is where you can then create a Futures Leaders program where frontline employees can put in an application to get onto the leadership development program. It doesn't mean they're going to get into it, but they can be a review system, and then they can be part of that leadership development training too, which then trains them and starts to develop them before they actually have to become a leader. And then it supports them on going after that too. A lot of companies talk about succession and then they do nothing about it. It's actually creating this leadership system of developing leaders linked to your culture, linked to the way you do strategy and behaviour deployment, but also other critical systems or processes in your company, that truly creates a sustainable ongoing approach where then you have leaders growing from the bottom up. They keep the culture going, they keep the system going, they're getting trained in a way that links up to your company's culture and the systems of your company, and it truly creates great results. Like, this is a key aspect of what the great companies do. And I'd really recommend reading that chapter in Leading Excellence. That talks a lot to that. Dargs provides a case study that he did with a previous company. They did it only within the call center. So it's actually an example where he let it out within a division. The whole company wasn't on this journey, but he let it out with the division that then highlighted how great this could be. So again, I want to refer back to that. Both with strategy and behavior deployment and this leadership development, it doesn't have to be the whole company. You don't have to wait for senior leadership to buy into this before you can go forward. It can be done within just the call center like Dargs did back in a previous bank he worked with, which then highlighted how great this type of system could be to move forward. The final bit I'll say on it is that in your leadership development program, you can then bolt in the few key lean or agile or other techniques that you need, and just have it part of as a common development program to really grow people for the future. So both these aspects of strategy and behavior deployment and execution and leadership behavior is really simple. It's not easy because it requires us to focus energy here and go through the hard journey ourselves to actually get good at it, which requires us to learn new habits and skills. But there are people out there like myself, Chris, Dargs, others in the Enterprise Excellence Group, Alex Teo, Warren, Indy, new members coming in who can really help you. But the main thing I'd say is that the results you get as you get better at these is just dramatic. The thing I'd recommend as a takeaway is to become a member of the Enterprise Excellence Group website. You can do that through the website or through even the podcast, the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website. We are doing one-day workshops on these topics and others going forward. The one-day workshop is actually a great starting point because it allows you to break away for one day that most people can do, because the sun will still come up tomorrow if you get out of the office for a day. Learn and get inspired with others through this. There's great companies in the room. Like, we've run multiple events already. Some of our best companies in the country are in the room. We can learn from each other, and it will help you learn more deeply the system and ideal behaviors, the purpose of it, to actually go back and start down the path. And then if you need more help, you can get it. So everyone, please jump on the website and reach out, contact us, or actually just register through the downloads. On the Enterprise Excellence Group and also the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website, there is a download section. There is templates and blogs and white papers on strategy and behavior deployment. There is also white papers and blogs on leading excellence. And there's also connections to be able to get the book as well. So a lot of resources to get involved with. I'd recommend watch out for those workshops. They're a great way to also then get your hands dirty and start to learn more in these approaches, and they're only one day. And everyone, there's a big picture to getting good at this. You know, the big picture is that we can truly help create a better future for generations to come. We can help make our companies healthier, better, and then help the economic outcomes of that. You know, we become more productive. That then drives more prosperity for the future. And we become more productive without burning ourselves out, like in a calm, focused way. And also we build leadership capabilities that create greater cultures that we work for. So people go to work, they have inspiring days at work. They then take that energy and inspiration home, which helps our community. And it also helps the culture of everything for our future generations. The final bit I'll say is, I haven't referred to environment a lot here, but the way that you get rapid improvement for environmental is to connect it into your company's purpose, vision, and objectives, and set some aspirational goals for it as one of your key focal points. And then just do the strategy and behavior deployment. And it's also the leadership language and behavior around it of, do leaders mock environmental improvement, or do they lean into it and go, yeah, it's great. It's great if we can run an improvement to help our customers and our company be better, but also reduce our footprint. And so again, to get the environmental gains for the future that we're all concerned about and we need to do, it is again these two systems and approaches of strategy and behavior deployment and leadership development and being an adaptive leader who serves, that will get you the results. So everyone, really glad to start this point on 2025. I think there are some challenges out there, but there's some simple focal points to move forward and truly make things better for the future. Thanks for listening. Again, if you want to watch my scrolling on a flip chart as part of this, you can go watch it on YouTube. But I hope you enjoyed the podcast if that's where you're listening. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.
I really enjoyed recording that episode. It's a really important topic for me. I think these two simple approaches can truly make dramatic outcomes for companies and generations to come from that, both for the economy, the environment, also society. Unfortunately, we're spending a lot of our money and effort on stuff that truly won't cut through if we're not good at strategy and behaviour deployment or our leadership development to create leaders, or I should say adaptive leaders, who serve the growth of others. Hopefully this episode does become a good focal point for people to be able to listen to and learn and put effort in an area that's truly going to turn the dial. Of course, the two key takeaways for me was the basis of the show. How do we help organisations get better at aligning people up, creating motivation and energy through that, both strategically and linked to culture too, through ideal behaviours, and help them get really good at executing forward towards aspirational goals that align up. It's a very simple system, but like I mentioned in the show, it's a small degree of separation between becoming micromanagement and something that impacts your culture and something that truly gives you wings and helps you fly, build agility, I should say, and high performance. The driver of that is actually leadership behaviour, which is also driven by leaders' belief. Now, what we want to lean into is being an adaptive leader who serves the growth of others. We're all got different strengths and capabilities in this space, especially if you look at the 5 hats. You probably all look at the 5 hats and go, right, I'm strong here, but I've got some gaps there. It's partly why we wrote the book in such a simple way, linking back to the 5 hats, so that leaders can look at it and lean into where they develop themselves. And I can't highlight enough thinking about a leadership development program for your organisation that cascades through the organisation, but also then leans into future leaders. It truly helps you start developing those future leaders linked to your culture, linked to systems like strategy and behaviour deployment, having the key lean tools or agile techniques or, PMBOK or Prince 2, whatever techniques you want to use in your organisation built into it so that people learn it from the start. And we just help our organisation get better and better and better as we grow leaders for the future. This is truly how you get great succession planning. Everyone, I hope you love the show. Remember, on the Leading Excellence book site, you can get info on the book, on the podcast, Enterprise Excellence podcast, or the Enterprise Excellence Group website that are all connected together. You can get downloads, you can get access to workshops, you can reach out to be in touch for future workshops, get on our email list, you'll be notified of them all as they come up. And let's just work together to create a better future for our company, for ourselves now, because it will make things better for us. But ultimately, by making things better for us and our organisation now, we'll also make it better for generations to come. There's no reason not to do it. So everyone, connect up if you haven't already, and let's keep moving forward. Let's make 2025 the year that we really make a difference. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. Talk soon. Bye for now.